Hi everyone, welcome to Konveyor community meeting. Today is September 7th, 2023. We abide by Konveyor Code of Conduct, which means please be nice to one another. This meeting will be recorded and available on YouTube for later viewing. I am going to pop in the agenda link again in the chat, so feel free to add yourself. My name is Savita Raghunathan and I'm going to be your host today. I see a lot of new faces. Does anyone want to say hi?
Hello. Hello, I'm Timo. I'm from Germany. And yeah, nice to be here and join the first community meeting that, I'm really excited and see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Timo. Welcome to the Konveyor community.
If you are an actual Detroit Lions fan, I'm sorry.
I see a chat message from Kunle. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, exactly. My name is Kunle Abashiru. I'm from Nigeria. Joining for the first time. Yeah.
Wonderful. Welcome everyone. Just give me a second. I have a lot of feedback, and do you all hear echo right now, or is it good?
It's good now. I think it was someone.
Okay. Cool. So welcome everyone to the Konveyor call. So I'm going to kickstart the meeting with the first thing on the agenda. It's going to be a demo from David. So whenever, David, you are ready, please take it away.
Are you guys able to see my screen? So what I'm going to do, so my understanding is everyone likes slideshows, so we're going to go ahead and do like a slideshow to talk about what we've done with the .NET progress. So a quick overview of what this is going to look like. I'm going to talk about the what we're doing, the why we're doing it, a little bit of a therapy session to talk about the painful lessons that we've dealt with so far, and then a where we are now, so a demo of the progress that we've made, and then a little discussion of what's next for this. So what we're doing, so we're trying to implement a provider that enables analysis of .NET projects using existing language servers. So there's two publicly available language servers. One is called OmniSharp Roslyn. This is the one that if you were a .NET developer, C# developer on and you use Visual Studio Code, if you use the VS Code C# plugin, like this is provides the language services for that plugin. The other is this called a C# language server. This is written in a different language. It's called F#, and it's a self-described hack, but it's an alternative to OmniSharp Roslyn. It looks like a lot of this project's existence is due to frustrations with OmniSharp Roslyn. There is one other that is baked into the VS Code C# plugin, but it is not publicly available. So for the purposes of our discussion, it doesn't exist. Why are we doing this? So beyond the Java provider, what we want to continue to do is prove out the concept that leveraging the language server protocol and grabbing existing language servers actually minimizes the effort required to implement new providers. And so today it might be .NET, tomorrow it could be Python or Node, and we want to prove that the investment in this LSP approach is worthwhile. The other is .NET is very popular and it's been around for a long time. It being around for a long time means that there are a lot of applications out there that require work in order to get into a container, to get running in Kubernetes, for example. And so that's a lot of the why. So quick therapy session. It's been a good time. One of the things that we learned pretty quickly is that if you're, I missed the slide. Therapy session. Okay. So both these .NET language servers require SDKs and runtimes and assemblies in order to function. What this means is that we need a Windows host. So we can't run this on Linux. The reason is that if it's sufficiently old that it doesn't run on Linux now, and it doesn't run on Linux now, it can't be put in a container. The SDKs and assemblies needed to build and run it are Windows only. So that was painful. We tried a few things to see if we could make it work, but it didn't happen. So we needed Windows. Another thing that we've learned is that language servers don't necessarily implement the entire protocol. In our case, you can see in the picture provided that the LSP driver for OmniSharp Roslyn is actually experimental and didn't really. There's nothing in their code base that suggested that. But when we were playing around with Visual Studio Code on Windows, came across that flag and noticed that it's experimental. So my current working theory is that the likelihood the language server you're talking to implements the functionality you need is inversely proportional to how much you need it. Okay, quick rundown of where we are now. So we are running this .NET provider on a special Snowflake Windows server. What that means is it's been manually configured for building this Nerd Dinner application. And we've made this instance publicly accessible by opening ports and making it so our analyzer, the provider, can be talked to by the analyzer. So we tell the analyzer how to reach this provider, and then we write a toy rule that kind of demonstrates the idea in a more practical way, a query that an end user may actually want to write. So for us, this meant, could we find all references to system, web, MVC, HTTP not found? So with that, I'm gonna stop sharing the slides, see if I can share my screen. Yeah. Sure, entire screen. Here we go. Right. So here, I'm going to hop onto a Windows host. So this is a Windows server. Are you guys able to see this? The text is small, but that's not totally important. So this is a project loaded in Visual Studio Code on the Windows host. It is the Nerd Dinner application. This host has been set up to run or to build the Nerd Dinner application. So in here, I can go back to my provider and see all the stuff I've been doing. So I can start the provider on this host, and I'm exposing port 65123. Give it a minute to actually start running. This is one of the behaviors I've noticed with this Windows server, is that sometimes it like immediately drops into the program, and other times it just kind of sits there for a minute. While that's going, I'm going to go ahead and show you the configuration for the analyzer. So we have this provider settings file, and in here you can see I'm giving it the public IP address of this Windows server and the port that we were opening. And these locations are locations on that host. So the location to the Nerd Dinner application is here, and the provider specific config for specifying the server path to be that C# language server. And our toy rule here is we're saying that for some reason, this HTTP not found from system web MVC is bad. And so I messed up that reference, but that's okay. But we're having a .NET reference, the namespace is system web MVC, and the pattern we're looking for is HTTP not found. So now that it's listening, I'm gonna go ahead and run the analyzer. It feels so much slower when you're doing it as a demo. Or you're doing it on your own. So it's okay.
You gotta prepare some jokes.
Yeah, that would require me to be funny. So what you can see in this output is we don't actually have a way of opening these files, but you can see the rule returned, and it's complaining that it can't read these files because on the host where the analyzer is running, it doesn't have access to that file location. But if I show you the output, you can see that it found the 3 references to HTTP not found in the project, and it's giving their locations in the file. And that's really all there is to demo at the moment for that. So I'll go back. I could go back to the slides, but really what I'll be saying is, do you have any questions? There are no questions. I will go into very quickly what's next. So what you saw in this particular example is a Windows host that is a very special snowflake that we configured. None of it was automated. It was all like, oh, I need this. Oh, I need to copy these files here. I need to do all sorts of special stuff to make it work. We want to make this more repeatable, more automated if possible, at least have a sequential set of steps that we can reliably get to this place, and start working on coming up with more practical examples. So there is this .NET upgrade assistant that can be used. So what we could potentially do is leverage that to see what changes need to be made to the Nerd Dinner application to make it, say, .NET Core, one of the more recent versions of .NET, and enable those queries via our provider. So those are the things that we're looking at, and those are the things that's next. Any questions? Yeah, feel free to ask.
This is awesome, David.
Yeah, there's many tiers, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And so this is your .NET implementation is one of the reasons why we joined the meeting today here, because I mean, we have a lot of Java applications for sure, but we also have a bunch of .NET applications, and we were looking forward to get such an opportunity in Konveyor to analyze .NET applications as well. And we would be more than happy if you would make more success in the near future, and if we can use that as soon as possible. So, but so far, great work. Thank you.
Yeah, that is. So in spite of it taking a lot of work, it has kind of proven the point that LSPs have been a good way to go, in that I'm not a .NET developer and I'm able to make it this far. I think the thing that we lack is the actual domain knowledge of what meaningful queries there are to make and making those possible. So that is where I think we're lacking the most, and where we could use the most help. So you will see more of this project,
and that's where folks like you, Timo, could come in and provide help to the community. So once we have the analyzer supporting a certain language. That means that you guys can create your own custom rules. But I'm guessing there will be some custom rules that will only make sense in the context of your architecture or whatever you are doing, frameworks, whatever custom stuff you guys might have in-house in your organization. But a big chunk of that will be dealing with generic stuff. Solving these generic migration problems, documenting them in the shape of rules, and sharing them with the wider community is really, really useful. And that's what we find lacking right now. And that's what we're trying to collaborate with GSIs for. That's kind of what we're trying to do, to be able to have an engine that is not only capable of running these queries and doing all this stuff, finding these anti-patterns on the source code based on whatever input you provide, also ship the tool with a series of meaningful rules that provide some value. And especially, we are definitely interested on the .NET framework to .NET Core / simply .NET migration scenario, which seems to be one of the hottest migration paths out there in the field right now.
I'm Max. I'm also working in the project of Timo, and I also tried the .NET Upgrade Assistant, and it's also like a pain to work with this tool. So that's also exciting if this would work in Konveyor, because it would make it way easier to use, because you also get just like an Excel or output where you need to search through a lot to find if it's compatible or not. But from what the good thing about the tool is that it's open source, so maybe the rules are there somewhere.
Hopefully, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, David, for the amazing demo and for setting the context. I appreciate that. It definitely provides someone who wants to watch it later or who's new to community and starting, and they get some idea of what we are doing. Thank you for that. It was a great demo. And if anyone has any questions regarding the .NET analyzers or anything analyzer in general, there is an office hour that meets every Thursday that alternates with the community meeting at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And there is also Slack and mailing list if you have any questions. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, I'd say we have reached the open discussion. The first one is from Timo. So Timo had a question regarding the Helm chart and another question regarding multi-tenancy. So I'm going to let Timo take over whenever he's ready to explain more in detail.
Yes. I've already seen an issue. I think it is issue 137 that was opened or created in July this year, I think. I don't know. Anyway, so we were also asking ourselves, like, so why isn't there a Helm chart in place yet? And because it would make things a lot easier for us to provide our customers with a more centralized conveyor setup. And yeah, what we would like to do is, so when we give a Kubernetes cluster environment to a customer, we could also provide him a centralized conveyor setup that he can only use for his project. But we use a GitOps approach with Argo CD, and we are using Helm also for templating, and it will be awesome to have a Helm template, or sorry, a Helm chart in place that we could use for then our internal templating. So the question is, what do you guys need to make that happen, or like deploy or provide a Helm chart instead of this makefile script installation thing?
So a lot of our build process right now revolves around the operator hub. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. So we build CSVs and publish that to a separate repo so that it's available via operator hub. And if you're looking at an OpenShift cluster in the OpenShift console, the biggest reason why a Helm chart doesn't exist is we haven't had anyone asking for it. That's been a big driver. The main problem that I've seen with pursuing a Helm chart is making it so we don't have to manage multiple manifests, if that makes sense. So right now we have a set of manifests that we run some operator SDK build bundle command, and it generates a operator bundle. And we really want to keep that bundle. If there were a way for us to also generate a Helm chart, or for us to start with something else, and we could generate from that both the operator bundle and a Helm chart, that would be great. But it wasn't immediately obvious just looking at it and looking at Helm charts how we would do that. So that's been the big blocker, I guess, on that.
And I think there was a reference to an issue that Dylan opened on November. I think that the Helm chart Dylan was referring to was to instantiate the operator and the operands, not so much about completely replacing the operator with a Helm chart approach. Is that right, Dylan?
That was my thought at the time. Yeah, I mean, if there's reasons why that's not sufficient, then I think it's worth exploring. But I mean, we were looking for just one thing to maintain, right? So it would be a whole. If we had to also support the installation without doing the operator method from a Helm chart, it's just another thing that could get out of sync, I think, was the thought process. I'm not saying we can't do it, but that was the thought process at the time.
Is installing OLM a problem for you, Timo, Marcus?
Once again, over what?
Installing the operator lifecycle manager on top of these Kubernetes instances that you provide and manage. Will installing that component be a problem for you? Because if you install OLM on Kubernetes, then via a Helm chart, you will be able to instantiate the operator and the operands for the instances.
Well,
if there's a Helm chart, I actually didn't check yet, but that's an angle that we could look, because then it's just a custom resource to install the conveyor operator, and then
Exactly. And we're talking about vanilla Kubernetes here, right? Or any flavor?
So running on AKS.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually it's Kubernetes. It's AKS, and again, the current process that we have is it's all based on Helm and also the Helm templating. So yes, that would help us more, or so we could stay in our process as it is right now,
Exactly.
and it would easier to implement that. Yeah, Helm chart would be awesome, as I said. So that would make things easier on our side.
I mean, it would also be one component less that is privileged to do substantial custom resource definition, installation, and so on. So that is likely something you want to reduce to maybe one or two components. And introducing OLM would be quite a large effort for a single workload if the current GitOps workflow is different.
Yeah, and the thing is, we only need it for that specific application, Konveyor, right? And we don't need it for we don't need it for anything else. And so and Alex is completely right. So the effort here would be too big, to be honest. And again, a Helm chart, a ready-to-use Helm chart, would make things a lot easier to implement that in our GitOps approach based on Argo CD.
I had another question, just trying to go through different things so we can understand. What would you do right now for authentication into Konveyor? Are
Yeah,
you
that's
using
another.
Keycloak, or are you doing something different?
Yeah, that's another thing. When it comes to a customer instance, what we have is we build a middleware with traffic that forwards to Azure AD, and so this is handled there with this middleware. So and only that user could use, or that user group with their instance could use that conveyor for their purpose. So
And one question, is Azure ID based on OpenID Connect? Because originally we used to ship Konveyor alongside Keycloak as the OpenID Connect provider for the instance. Now by default we don't install anything, but Konveyor is compatible with OpenID Connect. If you have an OpenID Connect provider, it should be pretty straightforward to integrate. Although you will have.
I don't think so, but that doesn't really matter, because I think what we could do is just with our middleware, we just put a layer on top of that application, and we don't really need direct authentication. I mean, it would be nice to have that directly in Konveyor as well, but at the moment, we wouldn't need it if we would use our middleware for that. So
okay.
So do you have some documentation on how to integrate Konveyor with OpenID Connect?
There should be some lying around somewhere, but yeah, let me tell you a little bit about the reasoning also around the operator. There's some part of the conversation that I think we're missing, is the life cycle of the instance. So one of the things we put the operator there for was in order to have this capability level 2, like seamless upgrades. So we publish stuff, and users can receive and upgrade automatically, and they don't have to care about the upgrades. If we get into an Helm chart paradigm, then each upgrade becomes somehow painful. So that's yet another thing to take care. Dylan was saying things that will get duplicated, so on and so forth. Now we will also have to document the upgrade logic for each release, which is something to take into account at least. And regarding the documentation, code is documentation, right? I don't know. We will have to look into that.
Oh, well, but it's cool to know that it directly supports ORTC then.
Yeah, I would say, as far as the Helm chart goes, it is not currently prioritized work. It is something that has been a nice to have, and if someone is championing it, then I think it would move forward. Is it something? Are you able to write Helm charts? Are you more familiar than we are with them? Is maybe with your experience, we can figure out a solution that there isn't too much of a maintenance burden on us to have both. But we don't want every release for there to be manual interventions that we have to do to publish one or the other or both. So we're working to make it as push button as possible. So if we regress on that, that would be a bad thing.
I mean, if you're interested, we can certainly pilot a Helm chart and see if there's what the issues are between upgrades, and figure out if we can automate them through some Helm hooks or something, and hopefully in the long run maybe even get this generated somehow through your release process. That could be an option that we could explore, of course. If you're interested in a contribution, certainly.
Sounds great.
Yeah, we'd be interested.
Okay.
Cool.
and there was some conversation around multi-tenancy as well.
Yeah. So that was the initial idea, actually, to have a. Yeah. So we were thinking about like, is it possible to provide our customers, so like everyone, a centralized instance with a conveyor setup where people can have their own space. So then we are talking about multi-tenancy, right? So where they only see their own projects and not like a huge list where they can access all the projects that are imported into Konveyor. That would be nice. Again, we would have another option, as I already explained, with giving each project their own instance, which they actually need anyway, and Konveyor would then just be another namespace on their K8's instance that they can use for their own purpose. So, but yeah, so if it would be possible, it would also be great to provide the users with a centralized Konveyor instance.
So option 2 is there already, and it's kind of the approach we were going for. Implementing multi-tenancy, I think it will take some time. So if there's an appetite from that on the field, we can eventually get into that. But that there's plenty of stuff to think and re-architect if we want to get there. Because when we conceived this thing, we were approaching this more from a position of, hey, self-service, you create your own instance for your team and you own it. This central stuff has started appearing in conversations. So I won't lie to you, we've heard this thing before, but when we say, hey, but you can have one per team, everyone says, I'm okay with that. So if it's just a nice to have, the idea is there.
Cool. Yeah, the cool thing with a centralized instance would be, so especially when you are in a cloud transformation journey, like we are with our company at the moment, that if you have, or like for the management, that you have a central overview of all the projects that are migrated right now. And if the management asks me, so like, hey, where are we now, right? And then I can tell them, hey, so we have, I don't know, 20, 30 the transformations at the moment, and they are at this state at the moment. So, and with a centralized instance, I would have a good overview with that. Again, I see other things that I would like to have first. So again, we can have a workaround for that issue and give everyone their own instance on their own Kubernetes instance. I'm more looking into, or I'm more interested now into the .NET implementation. That would be awesome and great. And also the Helm chart would then be for us, or would help us with this workaround. So provide the user with a conveyor setup and with the GitOps approach. Yeah, those two things are more mandatory for me, I would say.
Okay, since we already have some sort of issue to track this Helm chart thingy, although it's not exactly, it doesn't match completely with what you guys have. Maybe we can open another one or something like that. But even though it's a second-rate thing, second priority thing, this multi-tenancy, would you be willing to open an issue in our enhancements repository, explaining what you would like to get out of this, so we can start discussing in there and start planning the work eventually? Because I understand where you're coming from. I think it makes a ton of sense, but we just need the drive for that. And if you guys can pioneer this thing, it would be great.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. I mean, for the Helm chart, there's already an issue, and we can just put some text right underneath. And for I think the .NET implementation, which is I think our biggest pain point, because we have a lot of .NET applications that we would like to transform to .NET Core, and finally, of course, on Linux, and we can create an issue for that as well.
Yeah, the .NET thing is already being tracked. I was referring to the multi-tenancy, which is the only thing that hasn't been.
Okay.
The
Okay.
other stuff is more or less in our radar. The multi-tenancy thing, not so much probably. So if you could pioneer that conversation, and we start discussing in there, it would be great.
Okay, cool. No problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Engineers, anything to say on your side?
No, I got nothing. I was hoping for something funny. It never came.
I'm looking forward to all the collaboration. So I'm excited about it. Thank you, Timo, Marcus, Alex, for bringing this topic. It's nice to see that there is a use and like Konveyor is being used and there are like new feature requests and whatnot. It makes me happy. I don't know about everyone. It makes me really happy. So thank you for coming to our community meeting and thank you for willing to collaborate with us. It's wonderful. And we have reached the end of the open discussion items. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to bring up to this meeting? Well, I did find one shout out from the chat. So I've just added it here. It's from David. Shout out to Fabian's fallback procedure when the language server returns no symbols. And that was a big piece, the solution. So it's a shout out to Fabian from David. And if you all have anything else that you would like to add, please feel free to add it. And I can show off our collaborators and contributors in the meeting.
I just wanted to give personal kudos to the Analyzer team because they've been amazing in the past couple of days. There were a bunch of issues and they solved everything in almost no time. For the Aldi guys, there's plenty of very interesting stuff coming up. We will be cutting a new alpha anytime soon. We are integrating the new analysis engine. An alpha is an alpha, right? But yeah, we've been testing this thing and the Analyzer team guys have been amazing. The Hub guys have been amazing. And we made a ton of progress in a matter of a couple of days. So thank you guys for that.
Thank you, Ramon, for sharing that. It's all right. I was trying to say something. My mind was thinking so fast, and I forgot the thought process. So when it comes to me, I will probably like drop it in the Slack thread or something. So that's all from me, and we have reached the end of the agenda. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in Slack. We have a mailing list. You can start a thread there, and we have community meetings every other Thursday. And if we have analyzer specific questions, we have a office hour that alternates with this meeting, and it's at 11:30 a.m. Eastern next Thursday. So thank you again for coming to the meeting today, and you all have a wonderful week. Until I see you, take care. Bye.
It's you.
Thanks, Buddha. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
bye.